Hey, Diana, you know you can effectively market your practice without spending a lot of money?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast, the podcast for lawyers about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I'm your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my co-host, my right hand, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Hey, Mark. Not much. How's it going with you?
Good.
Summer's come to Houston.
Yes,
With a vengeance.
With a vengeance. The 90-degree days just smacked us in the face. So,
with corresponding humidity.
And I'm going to play golf tomorrow in this balmy weather.
You just had to get that in there, huh?
I just had to get that in there.
Just in case you're curious, I will be working all Friday afternoon.
Yes. Well, somebody's got to do it.
I'm more impressed that you somehow have found yet another marketing episode is that what, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row?
I wasn't counting, but hey,
if it works,
if that's what our audience demands, then that's what our audience demands.
What are we talking about today, Mark?
So today we are going to kind of dip in and out of talking about the book Lean Marketing by Allan Dib. Now we did Allan Dib's other book, the One-Page Marketing Plan, I think a couple of months ago. I lose track of how long ago it is, but. So this is the sequel to that book, Lean Marketing, and Lean Marketing is all about being action-focused, low waste, and fast feedback marketing, okay? And so, a lot of lawyers get out there and constantly complain, how do you compete against the 800-pound gorilla in your market? So, in Houston, Texas, the 800-pound gorilla has traditionally been Jim Adler. Jim Adler spends tens of millions of dollars every year in TV and billboard. But Adler's now feeling the heat. There's a lot of young up-and-comers that are nipping at his heels. And now we have John Morgan trying to build his practice nationally. I go up and down the highway, and I see John Morgan's billboards out there. So, he's based out of Florida, but yet he's trying to move into Texas. So there's all of these people spending millions and millions of dollars, advertising, and of course, most of it's in the PI space, but even not in the PI space. Last night, I saw a lawyer advertising for insurance and hurricane claims.
It's getting to be that season.
It is getting to be hurricane season. Even in the little niche industries, a lot of people are spending a lot of money marketing. And so people come, they'll come, Mark, how do you market in an environment like this, when you don't have a lot of money or, you have a reasonable, moderate budget. So I think that's going to be a little bit about what we cover today. I think there's 3 very cost-efficient, cost-effective marketing tools. And I've coached enough practices out there that I've seen under the hood with other people's firms. And talk to plenty of lawyers. And of course, we go to Atticus and we go to Pilma and we talk to all these people. And the same 3 marketing channels tend to pop up over and over again as the most efficient and the most effective. In other words, the most lean marketing tools out there. So we're going to cover that. But a lot of it is we're just going to kind of cover some of the pain points that lawyers have with marketing. And I think we may end up at the very end, I may just give a kind of a brief rundown in our final closing segment of exactly what we do that would be classified as lean marketing.
Okay, so have we defined that for our listeners?
Yes, I said action, focus, low waste, fast feedback.
Okay, break it down like I'm not a marketer.
Okay, Lean marketing means things that you can do to effectively market yourself that don't cost a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it's from the concept of lean.
Well, I'm sort of just wrapping lean up into the concept. So my concepts sort of dovetail with lean. So we're going to be dipping in and out of the book, but this is not a book
tied to the book.
This is not a book report today.
Okay.
This is how Marc thinks about lean, efficient marketing. But we'll dip in and out.
But it is lean in terms of like it avoids waste.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. So efficient by definition means not wasteful. At least that's the way I look at it.
Got it.
Of course, that's Marc's dictionary. I haven't looked up Webster's yet, but that's the way I would interpret it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And, the first thing, obviously, is you want to avoid random acts of marketing. We've talked about this in the past. The best example of a random act of marketing is somebody, an old lawyer used to say, yeah, I got my best case ever. I gave my card out to somebody in line at a grocery store. I'm like, okay, that's not a system. That is a random act of marketing. You can't rely on being that lucky. If we all tried to be that lucky, we'd all go bankrupt. But what you're really looking at is how can you outcompete, and that's sort of a relative term, but how can you outcompete, the 800-pound gorilla in your market? The short answer is you don't have to outcompete them. You just have to outsmart them, because it's not about your gross revenue. It's about the profit. It's about what you keep. So if you can market effectively and inexpensively and keep most of your money, as opposed to the 800-pound gorillas, which are spending probably 25, 30, 35% of their revenues, pumping it just right back into the television, and they're working off very slim margins. They're probably working off 5, 10% profit margins. Well, that's great if you're spending tens of millions of dollars. But if you're not, you need to be lean. You need to be efficient. You need to find the things that work and stop wasting time on things that are just volume plays but don't really bring a lot of profit into the business. So I think that's kind of the point I'm trying to make, is a lean law firm is a profitable law firm. And that's what we're all striving for. We want a profitable law firm.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about some different strategies that you've used or some things that you think might be helpful for people trying to find their way in a tough market.
Well, exactly. And, you got to find your niche. What's unique about you? What's so damn special about you? That one of the quotes in the book was, marketing is the price you pay for being unremarkable. In other words, if you were remarkable, you wouldn't have to pay all this money for marketing. So there's lots of ways to be remarkable. One way is to have great results, post some great verdicts and, being able to capitalize on some great verdicts you have. But not everybody is fortunate enough to have a bunch of great verdicts. So then what is it about you that makes you unique? So that's sort of kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about here, is how to draw out the uniqueness both in you and to some extent trying to figure out what is unique about your ideal client and how can you match your uniqueness with their uniqueness. So anyway, with that, when we get back, we're going to kind of get into, in depth, lean marketing, and particularly Marc's favorite 3 marketing channels that meet that qualification.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
All right, so I've already upset Diana because I'm not following our outline. Shocking.
As you say, unsurprisingly, Diana likes systems and organization and structure, and Marc likes to mess with me by not doing that at all.
I know. I bring up my three favorite marketing channels, and she flips out like, this is nowhere in the outline. Where is that in the outline? It's not in the outline. It's in my head.
I didn't really flip out, and I don't think I get enough credit for that. So
She hasn't thrown anything at me yet.
we're still early on in the podcast. So first things first. What comes first?
All right. So first things first is strategy first, then execution. So
Okay, so don't just go buy a bunch of billboards.
don't just go flinging money around, which is the problem that a lot of lawyers do. I remember this, God, it's a long time ago. This guy I knew hit a verdict, got a little cash in his pocket, decided he was going to go buy a bunch of billboards. No rhyme, no reason, no plan, just going to buy a bunch of billboards. And he put up the worst billboards you've ever seen. It had him, you know, the picture where you're just standing straight, you're not even turned slightly angled to the camera to give a profile or anything like that, just a straight on with the hands over the crotch, the crotch protector shot.
Does that? I don't know that you can say that because then we get
I just
rated.
did.
We get rated.
I
Okay.
just did. So he's just sitting there with his
Very
hands
bad
over his
shot.
crotch, it's like a mug shot. It's just up on his billboard with a stupid cheesy grin, and nobody could even read his phone number. And he put up like 10 of these things, and I just looked around. I'm like, he's losing his ass right now. Nobody's going to call that. He doesn't have any TV backing this up. He doesn't have any radio backing this up. He just put up a bunch of billboards. And you know what? He's disappeared, and I haven't seen him in forever. For all I know.
He might be listening to your podcast.
Well, I
now.
just didn't name his name.
He probably remembers. But so what you're saying is that that was a tactic. What people
He
at
just
Tillman
threw
were
money
calling
at a
tactic.
random tactic. He had no strategy involved. I'm not saying billboards are bad, but the standard from the big dogs, the 800-pound gorillas out there, will tell you that billboards are a piece of a three-pronged campaign, which involves also TV, also radio. And the billboards come in and just have an anchoring effect. But they're not a standalone tactic.
And so that is what you would call a strategy, is having that three-prong approach.
If he had the strategy, now probably he couldn't have funded that strategy. That was the problem, is he tried to basically look at what worked for other lawyers and say, I can't do all three prongs of the strategy. I'm just going to do one prong. Well, the problem is a one-legged stool does not stand up. So that would be an example of what not to do. And he basically pissed away his money.
Yeah. So like most things, it requires you to plan first.
Right. So, you want to start with the strategy. And when you start with strategy, the first one is you need to define your ideal client. Okay, who are you fishing for? How can you strategize? How can you come up and do, as Allan Dib would say, do the one-page marketing plan, which is his, like I said, was his first book, which is more strategic and less tactical, because it has to be, because it's only one page. So who is your ideal client? What are you fishing for? So like for us, for example, we're very specific about what we're looking for. We want clients that are between the ages of 45 and 62, because that's the sweet spot in the disability world. We want clients who have chronic disabling diseases, Parkinson's, lupus, heart disease, cancer, these types of diseases that are what we're looking for. We want them in a certain income bracket. So we have a very defined target, we've actually come up with the avatar. We call him Mike the Mechanic, that I gave this presentation earlier this week to Mexican American Bar Association, and I used Mike the Mechanic as my foil, as my avatar, and I describe what we do based on Mike's story. So we put all this together and we think about it. So what are we looking for? So that's what the first thing you have to do when you're strategizing is define your ideal client, and what are they really looking for. So the next concept, I'm going to dive back into the Lean Marketing book, Allan Dib's book, because he came up with the 7 motivators to build campaigns around. He's talking specifically about marketing campaigns. And it really gets into the psychology of why people buy. And again, you have to remember, you are selling something. Don't get caught up into this crap that you're a profession and, I don't need to sell myself. Yes, you do. You absolutely need to sell yourself. And your clients are buying something. So what are they buying? Dibs comes up with the 7 motivators, or the 7 things that causes people to buy.
Sure. So there are 7 motivators: money, time, freedom, peace of mind, status, leisure, and approval.
Right. So those are the 7 motivators. So I kind of went through, and how do you reinterpret that for the client? So the number one motivator for people is money and financial well-being. Okay. So you have to broaden it out a little bit. Well, how do we pitch that to people? We help you win your benefits. That's what we tell people. That's right front page on our website and all of our messaging. We help you win your benefits. In other words, we are trying to motivate you to buy from us based, number 1, on your need for money and financial well-being. Number 2, time. In other words, how can we save people time? How can we make it more convenient for people? We handle it all. We don't make you come into the office. We can sign you up at your home. You can do your hearing now virtually. We have what we call the easy button campaign. So we can save you time. That's the second motivator, second reason people might want to hire us or to hire you, depending on how you want to message it. The third motivator for people typically is freedom. They're looking to purchase freedom. Well, what does that mean in our context, in our world? In other words, so the way we pitch that is we help you take back control. So you lost control of the situation when the government denied your claim, when the insurance company denied your claim, maybe if you're in a car wreck or something, when the other person, caused you harm. So what we do as lawyers is we help people take back control of the situation that otherwise kind of went out of control on them. So that's kind of your selling point there. The fourth one, peace of mind. Okay, so people want to buy peace of mind. Well, that's actually pretty easy. We tell them, you can sleep better knowing now that you have an expert on your side. Now that you have an experienced attorney on your side, you can rest easy. You have some peace of mind that you're not in this fight by yourself. Okay. Number 5, status. You've earned this. We'll help you get it. So in our particular case, people qualify for disability based on what they have put into the system. Either they paid their FICA taxes or Social Security taxes, and therefore they've earned the right to file for Social Security disability, or they served our country in the military, therefore they've earned their right to file veterans disability benefits, or they paid their insurance premiums on their insurance policy, therefore they've earned the right to file this claim against the insurance company. But that's sort of how how we approach it from a status perspective. Like, we are helping you get back the status that was denied you when your claim was denied. The next one, leisure. This is great for PI lawyers. You need to not worry about this case. You need to focus on your recovery. Focus on your recovery. We'll do the rest. We'll take care of everything. You don't need to worry yourself with this. You don't need to spend any more time than necessary, although we all know that you have to get the clients to help somehow. But focus on your recovery. Focus on getting better. The fifth one is approval. I struggled long and hard with this one. How do we sell approval? How do we fulfill that need for somebody's approval? So I stuck it in ChatGPT. And it came up with you're not alone. We've helped thousands of people. Okay. So in other words, if we've helped thousands of people and we're also willing to help you, therefore you kind of gain the stamp of approval of you're now in the family. You're now in our herd. You're now one of us. maybe a little bit of a stretch, but hey, you give it a try.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting. So this is building on something, is it Cassidy Lewis last week or a couple weeks ago at PILMA that said that, she likes to get into the psychology of, her clients and why people are doing what brings them to her.
What makes them make a decision?
Exactly. And so I think that, when I was listening you talk about approval, I think that there's something about, some of our clients, you've said this to me from day one, they're going through the worst times of their lives and they know that. I mean, they're coming to us with these, they've got what they're going through. But when the insurance company or the government recognizes that and declares them and they get that victory from either the insurance company or the government, I think there is something almost validating about that that says that, yes, they recognize and I paid into the system and now we're all aligned. And I think there is something based on some of the client reviews that I've read from some of our favorable decisions, that's very validating to our clients.
Right. At the end of the day, a successful representation ends with the client feeling good about what you did for them, of feeling good about the representation. There's the old saying, people don't remember what you did, they remember how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. So never forget the fact that we're in the feelings business because we're in the people business. So by definition, you're in the people business, you better worry about people's feelings.
And one of the things that I was thinking about, is that we give our clients security, and I guess that would fall under number 4, peace of mind. But we're giving them security that they've got, that they've got someone advocating for them, so that they are literally, like you said, they're not on their own. But also, we're trying to get them financial security, that money from like number 1. That's I think security is such a big thing for people going through our clients who are going through such a tough time.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, another thing is we also get the medical benefits. So being secure in their health, being secure
in their future. As well, like knowing that they're not going to, they've probably got, for our insurance clients, they're seeing a, dwindling amount in their bank accounts and they know that it won't cover their future health costs. So I think that this really helped echo what Cassidy said last week or a couple of weeks ago about psychology and getting into the mind of your ideal client.
Right. So here's where I'm going to, piss off Diana again because I'm totally jumping the to something that's not on our outline here.
Sure?
Believe it or not,
I've got more pages
we
here.
actually do prep for these podcasts, and then it just goes askew. So fine. So that's what motivates the client. That's the 7 motivators that the client subconsciously is thinking about. All right, good. What about you? What about us? And I go back to Traction's, what are your 3 uniques? What makes you unique? For somebody in that situation who has these 7 motivating factors, when they're choosing an attorney to hire, what's so special about you? What makes you stand out? Particularly if you don't have a lot of money, if you don't have the marketing budget, how can you make yourself stand out? How can you be lean in your marketing approach, in that kind of environment? Now, we've identified our 3 uniques through the EOS system. And number 1 is I'm board certified. So therefore, I'm demonstrating expertise. My expertise gives the client a measure of peace of mind, also gives them a measure of status. Hey, I've got a hotshot attorney representing me. So it checks off some of those boxes. We wrote the book on the subject. So I have authored various books on disability, depending on what type of disability we're looking at. So that's my second unique, and that checks off some of these boxes,
I think approval.
Yeah, a lot of it is approval.
Yeah.
It checks off the approval box, and the third thing is, is say, we make it easy for you. We call it the easy button. You don't no office visit necessary, no fees up front, no fees unless we win. You don't have to go to the hearing. We can do your hearing virtually. All of these things, which checks off the time and the freedom button. Obviously we're trying to win them benefits, which checks off the money button. So think about it from your own perspective as what makes you unique. Now, sometimes it's about what you do. Sometimes it's about who you represent. We've mentioned this on prior podcasts. Sometimes people make them unique by the clientele they represent. Like I know some female attorneys that specialize in representing women who are victims of sexual assault, and that's what makes them unique. The type of client they actually represent. Sometimes it's your geography. Sometimes it's maybe your ethnic group or your language group. I know lawyers who speak Vietnamese and specialize in representing people in the Vietnamese community. So there's something, you have to find something about you that makes you unique, but corresponds to these 7 motivating factors. So that's sort of step 1 in the strategy is how are you going to motivate somebody? How are you going to mesh with somebody from a psychological perspective? But then that's where the rubber hits the road because, all right, that's great. We've now come up with a strategy. How do we execute on that strategy? And that's where the tactics come in. And you're just looking at me like, where am I on the
I'm real, guys.
She's just searching the outline like, where the hell is he at?
So I think you wanted to talk about evergreen marketing assets.
No, that wasn't actually what I was going to talk about at all.
Your 3 channels?
No. All right, we'll go to the 3 channels. Just to
You're throwing me a bone?
I'm throwing you a bone.
I think he recognizes I've had a hard week. So 3 marketing channels.
Time after time, all the law firms that I've looked at, it's these 3 marketing channels are always the most effective and the most efficient in terms of dollars spent. Number 1 would be a good digital marketing presence. In other words, you need to have a good, solid website. These days, everybody checks you out on the website before they call you, even if they've been referred by somebody else. They're still going to, just to find your phone number, they're going to look you up on the website. So you need to have a solid web presence from a visual perspective. Your website also needs to be able to be found, and that means it has to either be found via search engine optimization techniques, which are not cheap, but relatively speaking, they're relatively efficient in dollars spent. So you need to, hire a good agency, in my opinion. Unless you're just a computer geek, this is beyond what the typical lawyer can deal with. So you need to have a good agency that does all the things to promote you on your Google My Business profile, to promote you on basic SEO, search engine optimization, possibly LSAs, legal service ads, which, I find awful, but some people, they're useful. But those types of things that are relatively inexpensive and relatively effective. So I know probably for every dollar we spend on our website and on our digital presence, we probably get about $10 or $12 back.
Okay.
It's very efficient. Now, I'm not including pay-per-click. Pay-per-click's a separate beast. That's not terribly efficient, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm just talking about your basic website, your SEO presence, your basic organic digital presence. She's laughing at me. I don't understand why.
Because I'm like, where are you talking about PPC? But okay, so this is going to be a great little
Why don't you
reel.
just throw the outline away?
But it's my comfort zone. It's like a security blanket that's failing me at this moment. So we get a good ROI on our SEO, but
Yes.
not PPC.
Yeah,
which is a different strategy.
PPC is different because you've got to pay per click.
Got it.
Okay, so that's tantamount to advertising on television. It's sort of, in my mind, it's just sort of the same thing. Just a different venue, but it's still probably about the same in terms of cost effectiveness. So number 1 is your strong digital presence, your website, your SEO presence, your Google My Business presence. Very effective and very cost efficient, very lean. Number 2, it depends on what type of practice you do. In our world, it's attorney referral marketing. In other words, marketing to other attorneys. Now, again, I think I've tried to think of a way that these 7 motivators that we talked about, would they apply to attorneys referring to you as well? I'm not sure that all 7 would, but I think a couple.
Money
Money obviously would be one, if you can pay a referral fee. But if I have a case that's worthy of a referral fee, why am I giving it to you as opposed to somebody else who maybe have a better reputation?
So they have to work together is what you're saying.
So it's really more about peace of mind because they want to know that they're referring it to somebody that they can trust. Somebody will do a good job, somebody who won't steal their client, somebody who will give them accurate feedback, who will pay the referral fee on time, or if it's not a referral fee situation, say if it's a criminal family law case or something like that, at least won't embarrass them, People want to refer to people that they know, like, and trust.
Of course, yeah.
So just like anybody else. So number 2 on my list is attorney referrals. Very inexpensive way to get cases. The third, and for some people this may be the second, but in our case the third, is client referral marketing or your database marketing. So marketing to people that are your clients, your past clients. Maybe they were potential clients that didn't hire you for whatever reason. I also throw in that list just people I know randomly, people I went to high school with, non-lawyer types, people I've gone to church with, people that I know that for whatever reason don't hate me, just anybody. Marketing to that list. So those 3 are the most cost-efficient, most lean ways of marketing. And this is how you compete with the 800-pound gorilla who's out there spending millions of dollars on television. Now, none of these things are free. They do cost a little bit of money, and they also cost time. And that's really, in my opinion, the bigger cost on the referral marketing side is you do have to invest your time. And never forget the fact that your time is valuable, and there's an opportunity cost there. But I still think it's kind of the most effective thing you can do. It's the leanest thing you can do.
Well, in your website, takes time to build up your reputation with Google, right?
Yeah.
So it also is it's not something that you can do, once even today and then have it work for you in the future. So it takes time to work. Like you said, you got to find the right agency, then you got to develop the strategy with the agency and then execute that strategy. So I think that is why, that whole concept of don't do random acts of marketing is even more important.
Yes, this all needs to be systematic. Random acts of marketing or occasional lunches here, there, and yonder. Systematic marketing would be something like, systematic gift giving to referral sources, systematic scheduling of lunches once a quarter or phone calls once a quarter, doing something as like a newsletter, something that keeps in touch, keep yourself in front of these things. The other day we had a happy hour where we invited all of our referral sources, and a lot showed up, but a lot more called me and said, "Mark, so sorry I can't make it, but thank you for inviting me, but I have a conflict." And that's okay. I didn't mind that they didn't show up. The fact that they noticed I invited them and that they made the effort to call me and apologize for not being able to come, that still led me to have some more contact with that person, some more FaceTime with that person.
So I'm going to throw you a question that's not on the outline.
Okay.
How does it feel, Mark? So some people...
Oh, I love it.
Social media. We don't talk about social media as a strategy, though. Obviously, we have a social presence at PILMA, and with they talked a lot about social media and the utilization of it, and then also with the advent of AI and the ability to use AI with social media. I think that for people who either have a very small marketing team and or maybe are just a one-man band like you were, call it 10 years ago, social media is or is not a viable strategy if used in the lean marketing. If you're consistent with it,
yes,
utilize the 7 motivators.
So here's how I think of social media can be used in a lean, cost-efficient sort of way. So there's 2 ways to use social media. There's organic social media and there's paid social media. Okay, so I'm going to take paid out of the equation for the moment because it is what it is. You have to pay for it. Mm-hmm. Organic social media is where you grow your social media presence through natural connection. Okay. And you can do that a lot of ways. You can have a firm page and try to get your client to like it. And then if they like it, then they get on the feed and they see they see you pop up fairly regularly, and it becomes top of mind. In my mind, it becomes a supplement to your newsletter. It's just another way to touch your client regularly. They see your name popping up regularly because on your feed. Here's the way I like to use it. So my personal Facebook page, I have about 1,200 lawyers that are friends of mine on Facebook. These are all people that I have some connection with. I know. Now, I did have the advantage of being president of the Houston Trial Lawyers Association, and I had, in 2010, as a matter of fact, right when Facebook exploded. So I got every lawyer in town friending me on it. So I have this audience of about 1,200 lawyers on Facebook. And it used to be better than it is now. Facebook has kind of sucked lately, but so I post regularly on Facebook. And I sprinkle in business-related items. Like last month I sprinkled in an item where one of our young attorneys won a tough hearing, and I just said, "Congratulations, Aaron, for doing a great job handling this particular hearing." And I just dropped a few hints about what the case was about. And all of those 1,200 lawyers out there, if they were paying attention, had the opportunity to see that. Okay? I go to conferences. I put that on my Facebook. So all of these 1,200 lawyers get an opportunity to see, hey, Marc's being active. Marc's out there doing something. I put personal stuff out there. I had a crawfish boil, and I put a nice big picture of this big pile of crawfish that I just cooked up, and put that out there. So I'm just being social, and this doesn't cost me anything. I make a point every morning to go check my Facebook because it says whose birthday is today, and I wish everybody happy birthday that is that day. Another way, I'm just touching these people. So this is an absolute free way to use social media. Now, paid social is a whole different beast.
So, but I think, sorry, to wrap up before we go to paid social, one of the things though is that you don't want to be, so can you be inconsistent with it? But so one of the things that made me think about it was, I think his name was the lawyer out of Louisiana, Jefferson Fisher. I could be saying that name wrong, but he started out, whoever the gentleman was that started out posting videos from his car. I think he literally had a seatbelt on. And he would talk about like 3 ways to talk to someone when you disagree with them. And then he just consistently would talk about communication styles and ways to communicate. And he did that, I would guess, on a fairly consistent basis. And then he got a book published about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one way is what I was thinking. If you're not going to run for president of HTLA and you don't have your 1,200 on Facebook, that's what I was really thinking. To keep it from being a consistent or an inconsistent or a random act of marketing, you can do this from your car. Just set yourself a reminder on your phone every Tuesday at 8 a.m. to talk about whatever that you're going to do. And it's not that expensive.
Right. And there's lots of channels. I use Facebook as an example. There's YouTube. There's LinkedIn. There's lots of social media out there that, you can, as long as you're consistent, you can become sort of a regular face that people see.
In PILMA, we talked a lot about how a lot of people are using AI to help them with their marketing. So don't think that you need to have a big team. Marc's got a great team. He's got a 30-year reputation. And, obviously in I don't know when you said you ran but you've been doing this for so long. Anyone of our listeners, you don't need to be doing it for that long. Utilize AI and do with it.
I mean, I know a ton of young lawyers who are just killing it on social media. Now, I'm not so good at it, but we'll save paid social media for another day because we've experimented with paid social media and we've yet to get that to work. So I would consider that not very lean at this moment.
So what do you want to talk about in our final segment, Marc?
So in our final segment, we're going to come back, I guess we're going to wrap up and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the tactics that we use and how we actually measure whether our tactics are cost efficient or not. So it's if you're not measuring, you're just guessing. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we measure things when we come back. I'm Marc Whitehead, a lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks so much for tuning into the Successful Barrister podcast. We have a blast creating it, and I hope you find it helpful. If our chats have sparked your interest, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at marc@markwhitehead.com. That's Marc spelled with a C. Enjoying the Successful Barrister newsletter. Even better, let's hop on a call. I'd love to chat about how we can collaborate, share ideas, or just catch up. All right. So we're going to wrap up talking about, again, lean marketing, which, again, I'll just remind you, since you forgot it the first time.
Thank you, Marc.
Means marketing with less waste, more speed, more leads. As we talked about, start with strategy, then act fast and adjust frequently. So that's one of things about being lean is not only are you not wasting time, effort, and money, but you're also being agile because you're testing things. Did that work? No. All right, moving on. Did that work? No, moving on. You're always testing. You're always being agile. Don't be married to any one particular, tactic right out of the gate, because what you're trying to do is experiment. So when we experiment, we have this massive spreadsheet that McKinley puts together, and she uses some sort of magic fairy dust to make it all come together.
And McKinley's our marketing manager.
Yes. And it has how many different marketing channels at the top? 16, 17 different marketing channels? So when I refer to a marketing channel, I'm talking about a way that we categorize leads. So it was either an attorney referral, it was a client referral.
How the lead came in.
How the lead came in. It came in could have come in through television. It could have come through organic social media, paid social media. It could have come in through different
newsletters, magnet calendar,
just whatever that marketing channel is. And we track each of those channels, and we track it in a couple of ways. So one way we track it is we use call tracking numbers and specific URLs with landing pages for different marketing channels. So we have a newsletter that goes out. It has its own call tracking number on it. We have TV commercials. It has its own call tracking number. So when they call the number, we know where they got the number from. So that's the basic way. That would be what we would call last touch attribution, correct? If I'm saying that correctly? The other thing we're trying to do, I'm not sure how successful we are, but we're also asking, when did you first hear of us, or what made you think of us? Because a lot of times people hear us in multiple ways before they call us. One of the reasons I think that your website gets probably a little bit more credit than it deserves is because people hear about you in different ways, and then they go look you up on your website, and the number they call is the number on your website. So the website gets that last attribution credit, when the reality is they may have been referred by a friend or an attorney, or they may have seen you on TV, or God knows where they could have gotten your name from various sources. So it does sort of muddle the picture, the attribution picture, but it's still, I think, fairly effective and important. So we have the spreadsheet where I'm going to throw out a random number. We have 100 leads this month that came in from the newsletter, okay? And then how many of those converted into cases? And what are the value of those cases? We have a way of valuing it. So we know that we got 10 cases that are worth $30,000 in legal fees. We spent, on that newsletter that month, we spent $5,000. So 5,000 divided into 30,000, that's 6. We have a 6-to-1 return. I made $6 for every dollar spent. Mm-hmm. That's how we determine our return on investment per marketing channel. So every month, every quarter, we know how much we spent on a particular marketing channel, and we know in terms of dollars how many dollars were returned every month. Now we do use estimates. So, we use statistical averages that we know a typical SSD case is worth this. We know a typical veterans case is worth this, and so forth. So we base it off of historical averages when we kind of come up with that. What are the cases worth? Mm-hmm. We won't know for 18 months if those cases actually pan out, or what they're actually worth. So But that's too late. We need to know in real time how our marketing is working, because we need to be lean and we need to be agile and we need to be able to kind of adjust on the fly, which is why we assign values to claims based, again, it's based on historical averages, which over the long run hold up pretty well. Okay. They may not be perfect, but they hold up pretty well. And what we strive for is marketing channels that get us at least a 5 or 6 to 1 return on our investment. That is what we would like to see. And anything that gets us 5 or 6 to 1, I consider an efficient, i.e. a lean marketing channel. And we keep doing it and we put more effort into it. For things that aren't lean, in other words, they're only returning 2 to 1 or 3 to 1, we have to evaluate those very seriously. Are we going to continue doing those? Can we adjust those or tweak those and make them more efficient? Can we get them up to a 3 to 1? Can we get them up to a 4 or 5 to 1? Or do we cut it? Do we just eliminate it? It's not an efficient way of spending our money, so we need to stop doing it. But until you know your numbers, you're never able to put together that spreadsheet to actually make an informed decision about whether what you're doing is efficient, i.e. whether what you're doing is lean.
And I think that that's the most important part of, well, I don't know, the data geek in me thinks the most important part is it's almost like the closing circle of your marketing plan is making sure you're tracking how efficient you are. Make sure you put those systems in place before, so that you know what you're tracking, and so that you can know whether or not to spend money there next time.
Yeah, the way the book puts it, track, test, and then tweak. Marketing is not a set it and forget it. You're always testing, you're always tweaking, you're always making adjustments, you're always being agile. Things change. Things work for a while, then they don't work. I remember back when everybody loved LSAs. LSAs work so great. Nowadays they don't work so great anymore. So you're always testing, tweaking, changing with the times. I remember the day when Yellow Pages worked really well. People don't even know what Yellow Pages are anymore. So marketing is always changing, always evolving. So you're always testing, tweaking, adjusting.
And a lot of the systems that you have now, whether that's social media or any of your basic newsletter software that you use, they come with built-in tools to help you track things, but never underestimate the power of a good spreadsheet.
Never underestimate the power of a good spreadsheet. Love me a spreadsheet. I know you love you a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's my love language.
It is her love language. All right, I'm getting the sign that we are over time and that we got to go. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So remember to rate and review us wherever you find your podcast. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, tell your friends. Let's pump up the membership. So let's go. Hey, and if you want our printed newsletter, make sure to email me at mark@markwhitehead.com. Mark spelled with a C. I'll get you on our printed newsletter list, which is got some good stuff in it that we're not allowed to talk about on air because it would violate our non-explicit rating.
Oh, well,
sex sells. We have to. We're selling.
We're
selling the sex. Anyway, visit us successfulbarrister.com and be sure to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a very sexy national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. God, I made them all blush. This is awesome. I love
Bye.
this. Bye.